Afternoon, Mike.
Good afternoon, Peter.
I noticed that you've got a little bit of an eye injury. Have you been in a fight?
No, sadly. I got some sort of eye infection. It
Oh,
looks worse on screen than in reality, but
you're feeling okay.
it's life, you know.
In our last few talks, we were looking, in some detail at the idea of what an objective is, and you put me on the spot, and we played certain games, and of course I've been thinking quite a lot about, you saying, why are you doing these interviews and all that, but we had some interesting chats. But one of the things that you said is that an objective is just fuel. But
don't say the word just.
All right.
It is the fuel which gets things going. It's terribly important.
But it doesn't exist except in action.
Yes, exactly. Yes, that's right. I may want something from you, but unless I put myself into action and do things to get you to do what I want, it remains totally a concept in my head.
Mm.
You know.
Now, when you introduced that idea to me, I mean, God knows how many decades ago, I remember us talking about it, and I remember you saying that in a way, and this might sound a bit technical, but in a way, this was a Stanislavskian idea that came quite a lot later in his career as a director.
Well, his focus on it changed. I don't know exactly when he started to use it. Yes, but basically, I think how it worked out was this. But first of all, Stanislavski very correctly and perceptively, and either through instinct or by having read something about Freud or Freud's contemporaries or predecessors, he understood something about the subconscious, and he understood that actors cannot play emotions. Emotions happen to us. You cannot switch on an emotion to order. They are in our subconscious and they emerge when they feel ready to. And that is why I think I've probably said this. It would be very nice if I could program myself the night before to say, Michael, tomorrow morning you're going to wake up full of the joys of spring and you'll be incredibly happy. But instead, I wake up and I think, oh, I'm quite worried. What the hell? Why am I worried? Because overnight, the subconscious has been working away and there's something it wants to draw my attention to. And therefore, I've woken up with this feeling of incompletion or something's missing and some disturbance. Yeah. Okay. Stanislavski realized you couldn't come into rehearsal, as I have a feeling that the contemporary actors of his time, most of them did. They came into rehearsal and emoted. They had a lot of technique. They had wonderful gestures. They'd learned that when I do certain things with my brow, that shows you that I'm commanding. And if I do, and so forth. And they'd learned to exercise their bodies to an extraordinary degree. But it stemmed from observing people, but became very mechanical. So it wasn't filled with anything. It was just an external display. I'm frightened. I'm frightened, which is actually a logical thing. So if I'm really frightened, I will do that. You see. So, but he realized this was not the right way in because all it did is it got actors into tension. So he thought, now if actors came into rehearsal and they played a need, an objective, a want, okay, they wanted something from the other people in that scene, they could play with some degree of truth, because he was trying to find the way that actors could play truthfully on stage with truthful emotion. So he started with that, and then later on in his career, and I can't remember the dates, he decided that maybe sometimes even generating a belief and a want might be a little difficult for an actor at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock in the morning, whenever those Russians started to work. And maybe it was easier for the character to come on, the actor to come into rehearsals and play the actions that the script indicated. Like, I greet you, I welcome you, I express my admiration for your achievements, I offer you a cup of coffee, because that's what the script is telling me. And by playing those actions fully, really greeting you, and then admiring you and so forth, emotions would come of their own, you see. And then by playing that little string or sequence of actions of what I'm doing, I might think, I'm doing this, why am I doing this? What's my intention behind it? What do I want from Peter? Why am I welcoming him? Why am I admiring him? Probably because I want him to do something for me. I want to get him on my side. I owe him something and I want to please him. I don't know. Do you see? So that's, I think, how he evolved. Now,
can I interrupt? Maybe this will take you away from what you wanted to say, but I want to clear something up, because all the talk in relation to Stanislavski is about what is called emotional memory or emotional recall. And I know that is linked to a lot of the American way of working with Kazan and you know, famously with Brando and stuff. Now, what I've understood from the discussions we've had over the years is that an action takes you forward, as it were. You're on your front foot because you're doing something.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Emotional recall, and the way in which you've characterized it often, is sort of like, how am I feeling about the fact that my father's died? Can you talk more about that and clarify?
I don't use emotional recall anymore. It's a very good exercise for young students, just maybe to get them in touch with emotion, you know, and cope with the fact that they're going to have to explore an area of their life if they want to be serious actors. But I think he stopped using it a long time into his work. And I stopped using it decades ago because it was a distortion. Now, if you want me to make quite a large aside, I will explain why. Let us say that I am playing Hamlet. Okay, and at the beginning, I am grieving for my father's death. I'm inconsolable. Yes. Oh, that this too solid flesh will melt. Yeah. Okay. And so forth. Really grieving. Now, okay, now my father has died. So I think, oh, emotional recall, right? I think about my father dying. And I go into all sorts of contortions emotionally, trying to remember how I felt and try to put myself in the circumstances, not going directly to the feeling, oh, I remember the day I heard the news, or I was there when he died. And I try to dredge up feelings. Now, I may not be able to, and so I will strain to try, did I feel sad? Did I feel sad? And I will sort of contrive to feel something, and the emotion won't be true, and you can see tension in me. I'm tense, I'm trying, my voice gets blocked because I'm trying to feel something which isn't truthful. Okay. Or I can remember very well and have quite a traumatic, rather indulgent thing, and full of such sadness about my father. Now, I am Mike Alfreds, who was born in England and lived in the 20th century when his father died. Hamlet is meant to be a prince, the heir to a throne, and his father was a warlike, you know, a warrior, a mighty statesman, and so forth. I am not him. He is not me. Our grieving will not be identical. So if I'm going to use emotional recall, instead of trying to explore and get to feel the way Hamlet feels, if I keep inserting Mike Alfred's feelings into the performance, it's going to be very weird, because suddenly I'm going to switch and think, oh, I must remember my dad, you see. And it can be very moving, but it won't make sense, and it'll be distorting because it won't be true to the character in the play. let's say when my father died, I just became hysterically angry. Well, Hamlet doesn't become hysterically angry. He just sort of, he just sort of almost wants to give up. He just feels very, he doesn't know what to do with himself. He's at a loss, isn't he? And so forth. I mean, it maybe isn't a good example, but you cannot be working your way through a play as an actor, going on your journey through the play, and then suddenly switch to me and push me in, stick me into it. It's like sort of, I don't know, what's the example? I don't know, I'm baking a cake and I suddenly think, oh, a friend of mine uses such and such and stick that in, but it isn't suitable for this play, you know, for this cake. I don't know. It's inserting something, and also what it's doing, it's making the actor very busy with themselves and how they feel and their lives and their traumas. Oh, and it's about me expressing myself, which a lot of actors go on a trip with, and it's very uncreative. It's very inartistic. It's sort of therapy self-display. I mean, I loathe it. You know, it might be believable or moving, but it's dishonest to the play.
And one of the things that you talk a lot about is being present in the moment, and
Yes.
you know, and the wonder of an actor who is absolutely present in the moment. And what you're saying about emotional recall is that it does tend to take you somewhere.
Yes, absolutely. Very, very good, Peter. That's a very nice point. Yes, it's literally, oh, I've got to do that now, rather than going with what is there. And you know, as I'm proceeding through the play, and I'm meeting people, and the actors are playing whatever they're playing, and I'm playing objects to them, so that my feelings are at a certain stage. And so when I start to think about my father, particularly, you know, in connection with my mother and her relationship with Claudius, you know, they've got married and so forth, and those particular actors on stage who've created their characters, who knows what my exact feeling will be when I'm very ironic with my mother. It might be sharper or sadder, or I don't know. Do you see what I mean? So what you have to do, and we're talking about emotion now rather than actions, but what you have to do is allow yourself to be affected and affect other people, and whatever emotions pop up inside you, you go with them. They are the truth of the moment. And if you're playing truthfully, really making contact with your partners and really pursuing your objective, whatever you're feeling at that performance will be truthful.
Okay. So let's go back. Let's go back to
okay.
Let's go back to the apps. Can I just ask you and say, define very simply, because what I've understood from you is that you feel that an action is never in the passive tense. An action, by almost definition, is active.
It's not. It's active. If I say I am sad, well, first of all, that's not an active verb anyway. It's a state. Okay. I am worried. But if I say I express my worry to you, it makes me active. See, if I'm saying I'm worried, I'm playing worried, and I'm getting myself into a generalized emotional state. If I want to share my worry with you, it becomes active. It forces me to make contact and so forth. You know, so yes, actions, the actor should be in action all the way through the play.
Totally. And an actor can say, I'm sorry, but that I can't play that. I cannot play that action. I love you is not an action that you can play.
No, you're worried about semantics. That's a whole other subject. I mean,
no, but what I'm saying is that an action has to be something that you can actually play with somebody.
Yes. So if I am in love with you, say, I express my love for you. I share my love with you. I reveal my love for you. I declare. There's an active verb, which means I'm going out to you to make contact with you. You see, love, hate, they're states. They're expressions of states. They're not actions. And they're generalized. They last over a long time. I love so and somebody. It's what I'm doing now from moment to moment, okay? So I'm always in action, and those actions are actually what the actor plays. That's the only thing the actor can play. You know, they can't play emotion, they can't play mood, they can't play character. They are the character and they're in a situation, and by trying to play their actions through those states, things get revealed. And what they are, the actions are my way of achieving what I want. Yeah. So the important drive, you know, the fuel, which we talked about at the beginning, is what gets me going. It's my reason for living. It's my reason for going through the play and its situations. It's my character's drive forward to try to solve the problems of their life. Yeah. Okay. And in order to do that, they have to get into action. They have to move into action, which is doing things, being active, doing, really doing. Rather than, a lot of actors demonstrate a state. They're not doing anything to anybody, they're demonstrating. Look, they're saying, even some very famous actors, particularly women, they're so busy displaying how emotional they can be, some quite sorry ones. And everything comes to a halt while we admire their emotion, their hysteria, their whatever. You know, they should allow that to be there and get on with the play in a sense. If that, because what you feel affects how you play your action. If I'm talking, if let's say my objective is to get you on my side for whatever reason, so I welcome you and so forth, and you're very amenable and you seem to respond to me, I will feel happier and happier. So all my actions will be played with more security and relaxation because you're giving me what you want. But if I say, oh, welcome, you're welcome, Peter, and you look a bit cool and say, well, I've only got half an hour, it'll change how I play that action.
So I've only got half an hour is what action?
No, that's...
No, but what is my action?
I let you know I haven't got much time for you.
Okay. And by the way, Mike, you're late. You came to this talk late. I rebuke you.
You rebuke me. Yes, I rebuke.
And so your action is going to get weaker and weaker because you're going to.
Well, no, it's not going to get weaker. I may have to change my tactics. I may have to be more forceful, more apologetic. How can I get? All right, you said to me, I can only give you half an hour. And I say to you, oh, Peter, what a shame. But I will make the best of it because it's so lovely to have you, even for 15 minutes. But then if you melt and say, okay, and I see you looking a bit milder, I'm thinking, oh, I'm getting some. If you say, yes, well, actually, in fact, I shouldn't be here more than 5 minutes, and I'm doing myself a lot of problems by giving you even half an hour, I might suddenly change my objective totally and say, well, then fuck off, Peter, which will be destructive, but the feelings may rouse me to want to break the...
And that brings me on to something else, is that there's a I don't know if you've seen it, there's a book by a woman called Marina Calderone.
Yes, I know it very well. It's a dictionary of actions, yeah.
And she breaks stuff down, I don't know whether you agree with this, into manipulative, destructive, and I've forgotten what the third one was, celebratory, but it was about praising, it is about, you know, and it's interesting that the shortest one is the celebratory one, the praising one. The biggest one is the manipulative one. That
we are all manipulating each other all the time. Actions are tactics we use in order to get what we want. If you think of the objective as being the strategy, my strategy for life is this, that how am I going to go about it? The tactics I'm going to use are my actions. So an actor who is more flexible, the more and different tactics they use in a scene, the more interesting it is, the more volatile, the more exciting. Okay, but you see, I don't like that book because it tries to lock everything into, it's very prescriptive. Okay. And I think there are more categories.
Ah.
You know, I mean, if I praise you, is that celebratory or is that?
It could be manipulative.
Is it? No, but is it manipulative if it's genuine?
Mm. Yeah.
You know, I would ignore that. Also, what that dictionary does, which is not very helpful, it lists things which are not actually actions. For instance, I seduce you. Well, I cannot seduce you until you're seduced. I try to seduce you, I praise you, I flatter you, I whisper sweet nothings in your ear, I spray you in very expensive perfume. Yeah, I praise your looks. Okay, I kiss your hand. All those things are in an attempt to seduce you. Now I can say I seduced her, but it's something. There are things that you cannot do until they're done.
Mm. Mm.
So you can't use those. I frighten you. No, I mean I go boo. I threaten you. I warn you. That might frighten me. But do you see what I mean? Yeah. So there's certain things you cannot assume to do, and they're all listed. The other thing, there's two women. It's Marina Calderoni and another woman. I think they do another thing. They say the verb it's got to be a pure transitive verb, and they're like sort of the word police, so the action police, and it's very, very narrow. You see, the way English is constructed, verbs often have prepositions following them. I explain to you. Now that's totally active. It makes sense. I explain to you what I'm doing. That's my action. But they say you can't say explain to. So it's not, if you look, it won't be in that dictionary. And they have to hunt around for a transitive verb to do that. So they go into all sorts of rather recherche things.
Well,
do you see?
That is really useful. I mean, that observation that you've made, I think, is going to be really useful to people because...
Well, the other thing I would say about all this, of course, we're talking about bloody language, about verbs, but the whole point is, this is the problem with actions, that people get into their heads trying to find the right verb rather than getting a sense of what they're doing. Some actors are brilliant with vocabulary. They're wonderful. I worked with an actor called Philip Voss, who recently died, sadly, and he was brilliant at finding the exactly right verb. Some actors are very frightened of language, and they say, I tell you, and I say, no, you can't use I tell, because that means you could do the whole script like that, or, you know. And so often I say to actors, if you can't find the right sentence, go, you, all right, you, all right, you.
Great.
It's a doing physical gut thing that you do to have an effect on somebody else genuinely. And when you do it, you're looking for a response to see whether you're succeeding or not succeeding.
Yeah.
And depending on the response, you're having to adjust your tactics, actions to get what you want.
Now, one of the things that I would sometimes say to actors is that once you kind of know what the action is that you're playing, the or no or whatever it might be, whether you can articulate it or not, then the line that goes with that action is kind of freed up, because I can say, I worship you, or I can say, I worship you. I have the freedom now because I'm playing the action.
That's right. That's wonderful. Yes, because it does often actors get very suspicious. It's almost as though they're being given a line reading. It isn't. It's saying you're doing something. You see, the discipline is, what am I doing? Okay, I'm praising you. Okay, but how I do it, as you've demonstrated, is totally open. And any action has a million nuances and degrees of how it's performed, depending on how I'm dealing with the person in front of me. And, let's say I'm doing the same scene every night in performance with the actor, and we're all going to be a little bit different every night, and sometimes very different. And I've got to go with what you're giving me on that night, not what you did in rehearsal. So I have my action to play, or pretty close to it, yeah, and I play that according to what I'm getting. So in a sense, I'm in a very disciplined improvisation, and I should not have any idea of how the performance is going to unroll. You know, I play with trust. I just go on a journey, and whatever happens, it happens. And that is that performance. And if I'm truthful with you, and really, when I say truthful, it means I'm really reaching you, Peter, not the character, but you, Peter, and touching you and responding to what you're doing. And there's a real life going on behind us, and something fresh is happening with us, then whatever we play will be really interesting and engrossing. And it'll still be true to the play because we're playing the same objective and more or less the same action. You know, there's a certain leeway for changing the action a little bit. But in fact, once the actor knows what's going on, they forget about playing, they forget about names for the actions. All they have the senses of doing, which is how we live our lives. I don't think now, oh, what's my action that I'm playing to Peter? Oh, I mean, I'm clarifying something for, or I'm stressing a point for his benefit, or I just do it because it's in me, because it's human. Do you see? Now, when I start rehearsals, I don't do this so much anymore because over the years, I started to work with actors who knew how it worked, and I could always resort to it if I wanted to. I used to break down the whole play into actions, which was very laborious. You know, every new action, now a speech might have one action, it might have 10 actions. It depends how it's written. And I would write them down non-interpretively. I would not make a decision. I would try to choose the bottom line logic of the action to play with, because I'm trying to avoid the actor being locked into any early decisions. Okay, now for instance, let's talk about the seagull. The beginning of the seagull, one actor says to another, "Why do you always wear black?" Now, at the beginning of rehearsals, or even after a week, I may not really know why that character asked that character that specific question. What I do know is I ask you why you wear black. So that's what the actor plays. I ask you why you wear black. I ask you to explain why you wear black. Now, and as I develop my understanding of the character and the situation, it could become clearer for me. Okay, I mean, it might be because I find you so mysterious and flattering, mysterious and enticing, that I want to know you better, and it's my way of letting you know I'm absolutely enchanted by you. Why do you always wear black? Do you know? Or I can be very attracted to you, but worried by the fact that a young woman about 23 or something is wearing black. And I say, why do you wear black? Do you see? So it could be very critical, it could be flattering, it could be, I want to understand you better. There's a million, you know, and there are many, many choices, and all of them would have a validity. And until I'm into the play and understanding my character more deeply, that speech will be very open, you see.
I mean, it could be a challenge, couldn't it?
Yes, it could be all sorts of things. And then her reply is, I'm in mourning for my life, I'm unhappy. Now, depending on how I ask it, that will affect how the actor responds. Now, but what if she could say, I can say to you, why do you always wear black? And she could say, I'm in mourning for my life. I'm unhappy. Duh. Like, idiot, can't you see? Are you so thick that you can't? Or she can say, I'm in mourning for my life. I am unhappy. Wanting sympathy and admiration or whatever it is. Or she could say, I'm in mourning for my life. I'm unhappy. I don't know which one's right. Do you see? Do you see?
But Mike, just to go back to the action, I don't. Those are three lovely different interpretations. But are they three different actions? And
Yes,
what are those
what am
actions?
I doing to you if I say to you, you say, why do you always wear black? I'm in mourning for my life. I'm unhappy.
I don't
I'm
know.
trying to make an impression. I'm wanting you to see an impression, give you an impression of myself, my attitude. I'm being very ironic about myself and sort of making you see that I'm making a joke out of something which is pretty unbearable.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, and I drink, woo, because I'm unhappy. Or I express my defiance, I don't know, with life, or I'm wanting to show myself to you in a certain way. So if I say to you, I'm in mourning for my life, I'm unhappy. I could be confessing, daring to reveal to you. Do you see what I mean? I mean, there are so many nuances and shades. And when we talk about it like this, it must sound terribly complicated for people listening. But what we're basically saying, I do something and it can be done in many, many different ways. The what is there. I explain why I wear black. That's what I'm doing. How I do it is totally free, up to the actor's creative spontaneity at any stage in the rehearsal and into performance.
Mm. And also presumably, like you said, I mean, that actress will maybe change her action at some
Yes,
point.
you know, she knows more about her character and more about the person she's playing to and her attitude to him at that time. It will keep adjusting. And as the actors make more discoveries, the thing will always be alive.
But that is a particularly complex example. Whereas if I say to you, okay, pistols at dawn, you know, it's unlikely that it's an I challenge you.
Yes.
That there are actions that can be very simple because they're,
Well, it may not know, but how you do it may be very.
Yes.
Pistols at dawn. Okay.
Mm.
Okay, you've been like that. Pistols at dawn. We have no other option. No, you see, Peter, you cannot lock anything into one choice. All I can tell you is since 1965 or 6, whenever I started to discover this, I cannot tell an actor how to play a line or where to move because I know it'll be a total reductive attitude towards their creativity. And as I say, do it this way, I can visualize 100 other possibilities sitting there waiting to be explored. And it is deeply insulting to the actor's creativity to be told, that's the way to play it. And now you will play it that way all through rehearsal and into the run for as long as it goes. And that is dead because the actor won't explore, the actor can't live it, the actor can't live what's ever been found. All they'd be doing is repeating the externals of what happened spontaneously when they first did it in rehearsal. So you're watching a sort of reheated meal, and the more it's reheated, the staler it gets. And if you go into long runs, say in the West End, shows been running for 6 months with the same actors, they may be very slick and very confident and they get on with it, but there's a sort of deadness. You can just feel there's nothing, because there is nothing happening. You see, if I know what I'm going to do before I do it and know how you're going to respond, there can be no danger, no excitement, no surprise. So I do it to you knowing how you're going to react to me. So I can't even react to your reaction because I've already anticipated. So I'm not in the moment. I'm not alive and present. I'm working very skillfully through a series of choices which have been rehearsed and polished, and they're varnished and they're dead.
And of course, you've got that classic thing where somebody comes off stage and says, what were you doing? Why did you say the line that way? Or why did you move over there?
Yes, well, I don't think many actors would say that nowadays. Most actors are much more flexible. When I was growing up, there were these old actor laddies, and everything was set and I can't play my line if you do that. you know, and it was still happening. An actress I worked with a lot was working down at Chichester, and she phoned me. It was not that many years ago, and she said, "Hey, Mike, I've got to tell you, I'm working with so and so, and she keeps telling me what I should play." She said, "Now, look, if you play that, then I can come and play that, and then you play this, and I'll play that." So she was directing the actor to give her what she wanted.
Oh yeah.
Awful, you know. So that's another world with which I have no interest. It's a world I despise, and if that's what theatre was like, I would be. I'd have another profession.
Okay, I just want to say a couple of things. One is that I think it's probably really refreshing to hear that the prescriptiveness that sometimes I think is associated with actions. I love the thought that you have said to your actors, look, if you haven't got the word, just let's see it in your body, as it were, you know, or vocalize it in some way. Or,
because we often do that. Instead of saying something to somebody, we say, "Oh, oh."
Yeah.
Or,
That's number.
we do things, you see, and that is an action.
Yeah.
I'm trying to convey to you my feeling about what you've just done.
Yeah.
Or
okay. Yeah.
you see, and one of these problems is because actors get into their heads, they don't use their bodies. So all these gestures, which I long to see on stage and I practically never see, are absent because the actors are so in their head and they're not deeply in action, and therefore their bodies have no real life. And that's a big bugbear for me anyway. But can I just try to clarify and simplify this in terms of technique? It's a very good way to start rehearsals with, for the actors to come on stage and with their actions written against the set, you know, the lines, and come on and say, "I greet you," and then my partner says, "I greet you back," and then I ask you how you are, I tell you how I am, I remind you of something we were going to do together, I reveal I've forgotten it totally, I assure you it'll all come back very quickly. And they're doing things, they may not know why they're doing it, they may not know what the objective is, they don't probably know much about the character, but from the script they can see that's what the bottom line objective is. If I know there are some directors like Max Stafford Clark used to do this, they'd sit around the table discussing their actions and fix them. And they often made interpretive choices. So they'd use very complex and subjective sort of verbs, like "I titillate you," or I don't know, I'll think of other examples, but you know, and rather than more simple, direct things, I do this to you and do that to you, you see? So what it means is the actors already have a sense of the journey very simply. So basically what I remember when I did a very well-received, one of my best productions of a Seagull at the Almeida. Did you see it? No, you didn't see that. That was before no, that was before.
It was
after, wasn't it? Anyway, well, think about that. I had a long rehearsal and we went every day, we would do the actions for an act, 4 acts. And on the Friday, we ran the whole play with the actions, without scripts, just with the actions. And it was wonderful because the actors could see a sort of journey through the play. They could see the spine of the play. I mean, they lost their way, they forgot, they went round in circles to get back again on track. They meandered off, they lost chunks, but they got through the play. And so the actors could get a sense of where the play was going. And they were in action. They were on their feet doing things to each other and sort of discussing it, interpreting, discussing their feelings, discussing the psychology. They were doing, and good actors, when they're doing, their minds are going, "Oh, that's interesting. I wonder why she does that." There's a little running commentary of them exploring and trying to say, "Oh, I like that, don't know that bit." And so there's a lot going on. And all I can tell you, it was a very, very useful process. But it is a slow process because the actors have to know what their actions are in order to write them down, or you've got to teach them, and that becomes a bit slow. And then the danger is you get into discussions about verbs, as we've done, which is because you're trying to get the actors on their feet and out of their heads. And I found other things I was doing were sufficient, and that if my actors were the truthful actors that I knew them to be, and I'd cast people who wanted to do this work, so I didn't have to go through all the actions with them, but I could every so often ask them, on that line, what are you doing? I don't understand what you're playing. What is that? There's a gap where I don't understand what you're doing. And you can look back and say, oh, I'm trying to justify myself to you. Okay, so all right, we'll just make sure that's clear, whatever it is. Do you see? And now the other thing about actions is, finally, you don't have to think about them at all, because if you believe in your objective and your objective is in you, you will automatically play actions. You can't do anything but. So we don't have to go through the script and talk about them all the time, because if I want something to look, my action is to make you believe how important this process is. So I'm talking with energy, I'm stressing things, I'm waving my hand at you, I'm doing instinctively a whole lot of things to get the point across. Do you see? And I'm not planning them. I'm not even identifying afterwards. I'm thinking, oh, I did this, this, and this. Do you see? I'm looking in your eyes to see if you understand me. Do you follow me? Do you see? Everything about me is wanting to make sure that you understand what I'm talking, you see. And and that's what we do in life. We don't think, oh, now I'm getting up, now I'm getting dressed, now I'm eating a boiled egg, now I'm putting some salt on the boiled egg, now I'm shaking off a bit of the salt because it's too salty. Oh, now I'm remembering I didn't use the pepper, so now I'm going to get up. You do these things. This is how we lead our lives, doing things. And even if I'm by my own, sort of in a dreamy reverie, I have an objective, is to allow my thoughts to take me where they seem to take me. Or it might be just to relax and give in to my feelings for half an hour. There's always an intention. And the intention guides what we do.
Mike, just on a very technical level, you said that this would be useful for people. You said that you would get the actors to play the actions. I greet you back, I offer you a cup of coffee. But you don't add the line to that action.
Yes, I do. No, I don't add the line itself. I may use a lot of the line, so it makes sense. Because if I come in and say, I greet you, I threaten you, it becomes very abstract. I warn you that I'm going to punch you in the face if you don't agree with me. If I just warn you, do you see? So sometimes you use a lot of the line, like I ask you why you wear black. It's almost the same as the line itself. I explain that I'm in mourning. I further explain that's because I'm unhappy. Okay, so sometimes you use the text, but no, say my action is this, blah 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 blah. You could do that, I suppose, but it seems to be rather ponderous.
So you do get a sense of what the import of the thought
yes, absolutely, because often actors say, I warn, I threaten, not even you, and then of course, they don't know where each other is when they're doing the exercise, and they get totally lost and it's vague. No, I
warn you, there's a zombie outside the.
That's right. Yes, yes, exactly. Okay.
Okay, brilliant. It's interesting you brought Max Stafford Clark up because, and I'm glad you did, because I was going to ask you, because from what I've understood, he had a slightly different way of
yes, as far as I gather, they sat around a table discussing them in their heads and making decisions, interpretive decisions. So they sort of locked, now in this case, they did lock the action into a choice.
Yeah.
You see, which, because my whole point is that the actors should finally be as creatively free as is humanly possible within the particular context of a play. So these exercises, which are very disciplined, are really stepping stones to root them in a discipline which will be at their availability and they don't even have to think about. So really, the ideal situation is the actor, they're off stage or they've got it before they come into the scene, they just click into their objective, walk into the scene, and whatever happens, happens between them.
But Mike, you know, I remember seeing a script of yours in Winter's Tale, and I just thought this was so interesting. Hermione
Yeah.
defending
Well,
herself. In
that's in my book. That's in Different Every Night. It's an example of actions. Okay.
and
And I
but every
thought,
single line had an action there.
yes, of course. Well, it did because you see, the wonderful thing about Shakespeare is this is a woman who is pleading for her life and trying to prove that her sentence, Leonardo's sentence, is unjust. Okay, so she does a whole series of things. You know, I don't think I can find it quickly in my book. Maybe I'll drag it up, and I can't remember which sections it's in now. But it's to show the variety of what she does. She states she reminds people of her status. My father was the emperor of Russia. Okay. She insists that she's always been true and loyal to him and challenges him to prove otherwise. She tries to shame him with the way he has treated her, thrown her into prison. She further shames him by what he has done to her baby daughter, ripped him from us. You know, she's been forced to give birth in terrible conditions and the child has been snatched away from her. She has been, you know, she goes through all these things which are different actions to build up her case.
And Mike, did you when you were working on that with your actress, did you get her to go?
Yes, I did. But then you see, I think what I did with that also was to break it down into different units of action. So her overall unit was to save her reputation or something. I'll have to look it up. And then there were ABCs, because basically the objective is the same, but she's using so many different techniques that gives it a tremendous sort of volatility and color and range. And I remember working on it with some American students that were at the Globe. They used to do their third year, the whole of their third year at the Globe. And this actress was wonderful, you know, and she was so varied and all, you know, and so it became terribly interesting rather than one long speech which tends to go on and you stop listening to it.
And I think that we're going to bring this to a close in a second. But one of the things that I think is so crucial here. I mean, this is probably not. This is so obvious to professional actors, but generally speaking, the idea of the specificity of every single thought in a good play. Every single thought has got a very different kind of quality to it. It's a different action.
Yes, it's a different
and
action.
making actors be that specific.
Yes, an action is really a new thought. It always starts a new action, yeah, a new beat, shall we say? Absolutely. No, because often, I mean, I won't name this person, this actor, very famous, and this actor used to sort of skim through long speeches. You know, to be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it's very good, very effective. Not a beat, not a thought, not an action. One overall quality. I was quite horrified when it was pointed out. Oh, do I really? Yes, you know, I mean, and that's why Shakespeare can be very, you know, because if you don't give variety and detail, the audience can't hear what's going on. If I'm saying everything in more or less the same tone with the same voice without any change, I stop listening. You see, if I said actions are like this, Peter, they're very useful. You can use them for this. You can use them in this way. They're very good. You know, that's the way you play a thing. And I play everything in exactly the same way to you, with the same rhythm, the same tone. After a while, you will go mad. Because we're full of color and change and nuance and shifting.
Yeah.
You know, so you see what you're doing with acting is trying to transform a piece of material into human life so it's recognizable, not necessarily by being realistic, but it's human. You know, the thoughts, the feelings, the ideas, and so forth. I don't know.
Good. Okay, Mike. That was our conversation about actions, and we're going to take a break and maybe come back, and then I think we're going to be talking about units of action, which is a different idea. Okay, thank you very much. See you in a minute. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed that chat. And if you did, would you press the like button and also the subscribe button? That would be great. And if you wanted to be given alerts to when the next one is happening, just press the bell button. If you want to put any comments or any questions underneath here, underneath the video, please do, and at some point I will re-interview Mike, as it were, and put some of these questions to him. So I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.